America and tell us more about his training methods and life in cycling. So I'll hand you over to Richard and to Graeme.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
very
that,
much, Charlotte.
Charlotte, for that nice introduction.
I think tickets for this sold out quicker than One Direction, Graeme. That's how big. Do you know who One Direction are?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you everybody.
Let's remain seated though.
Thank you everybody for coming to this early St Andrew's Day celebration. There's a button under your seat for subtitles if some of you are struggling. We'll speak very slowly. And Graeme, we're going to talk about your training manual. We're going to talk, as Charlotte said, about your recent exploits in America. But I was reading your training manual. I was struck by, I think I'd always looked on you as part athlete, part engineer, inventor. But it occurs to me that you're also a scientist, a psychologist, lots of other things as well.
Well, I don't know if I would go that far now. No, I'll tell you why. Well, firstly, let me say thank you all for coming and making an evening. Because if it wasn't for you, we'd be sat here like two sad Scottish guys on our own. And I can see all these, well, we are two sad Scottish guys anyway. But at least we're two sad Scottish guys in company. And I can see there's loads and loads of young people, and you know, it's 20 years ago.
They're probably too young to remember you in your pomp.
No, but 20 years ago, and really I could be forgotten as easy, and I'm not, and I appreciate that. I'd always wanted to tell an audience that, and I appreciate that fact. Anyway.
Well, Graeme, actually, can we hold that question for a second? Because the first question I really want to ask you is, you know, you were a great world champion, world record holding cyclist, British cyclist, at a time when British cyclists, when it wasn't fashionable, British cyclists didn't do the kinds of things that you did. And I wondered if you could tell us how you think you would have fared in the all singing, all dancing new regime at British cycling. How would you and Dave Brailsford have got along?
Oh God, it would be awful. You know, I'm serious, and not besmirching the I love that word, besmirch. That's going in the book, next one. Not besmirching the achievements, because it has achieved an awful lot in terms of medal production of medals and results that we've had from this system. But what people don't realise is the amount of wastage. The actual wastage, getting people, the amount of churn. What you have is a bigger machine churning more prospective young cyclists through the machine. And it's like a bag of Smarties. The bigger a bag of Smarties and the more red Smarties you're going to get. It's a numerical advantage. But I saw this coming down the line in 1990, the winter of 1993, Australian Institute of Sport. And I spoke to 4 Australian guys in Paris, and they were saying, you know, it's awful. It's like this military endangerment.
Well, the Australian Institute was almost the model, wasn't it, for what became the
yes.
British cyclist system now. It began in '97 with Lottery, so it came on just after you'd retired, really, for the first time.
Yes, and what I saw coming down the line from the Australians wasn't nice. They were talking about the amount of suicides, alcoholism, drug abuse from people, the people that have been wasted through the system. So, also, from my point of view, you can't be defective. I mean, people know that I've had my great results and they're pretty poor results. So you couldn't put me into a race and know Graeme will definitely achieve this in this event. Whereas if there's 10 other guys in the conveyor belt that can, then I'm getting bumped off that conveyor belt. It's a law of the jungle.
But would it have mattered if you'd been bumped off the conveyor belt, considering that you did it on your own anyway? Would you have done it on your own?
I think I was the last opportunity for anybody to come in from left field as a privateer. Because I was training up, I was actually training in the west coast of Scotland, a stretch of road, basically a measured stretch of road, and then go to the World Championship. That you can't come from left field like anymore.
You could. There would be nothing to stop you aiming for the world hour record, for example.
If you were a privateer, well, I'll tell you what the problem with the world hour record now is, because it's, and I actually tried out for this before I came up with the Beastie Project. Well, actually, I turned 40 and I thought, oh my God, it's downhill from here. Never going to break a PB. I'm really feeling really old. And then I don't know if a lot of people remember Jason McIntyre, the late Jason McIntyre that died when a council van pulled out in front of him in Fort William. But before that, Jason was travelling a long way from Fort William to come and race 2 miles from my house. And I thought, here's a proper challenge, I'm going to get myself fit. So me and Jason, I think we exchanged a couple of wins each, and I almost broke my own Scottish 10-mile record. And then Jason went on the better form, and I went off to do something else. But that got me thinking about, hold on, I might just get the form for the record.
You're jumping ahead here, Graeme. This is not like you at all. But I want this actually, but this links nicely to the very start of your career, because one of the things in your book that you talk about is how trying to beat someone is a negative motive. That's not what this book is all about. It's all about measuring yourself against your own potential.
Yes.
However, Jason McIntyre became a very important rival, as was Chris Boardman in your early years. I mean, would you have achieved what you achieved without Chris Boardman?
Absolutely not.
So, an opponent, a rival, is important.
Oh, it is, absolutely. And then once Jason passed away, then I lost interest in bike racing. That's how it went down. But my point about the hour record is that the hour record has now changed. I built a long bike. It's got to be a long bike, you know, this newfangled, old-fangled hour record where they drop handlebars and steel round tubing. So I built all of that, first principles, 16-spoke wheels, everything minimised as it could be, as long as it could be. It's a weird rule because your handlebars can't...
We're talking now athletes.
Yes, we're talking athletes hour. Now, the handlebars can't be more than 5 centimetres in front of the hub. It's not even related to the saddle. So you've got to build a big long bike as long as you're legally allowed, which is 65 centimetres from the bracket to the front hub. And then you get 5 centimetres more. Chris Boardman had a bike made like that. And see if you go back to Chris's hour, that final hour, you see he's actually got handlebars that's like 34 or 36 centimetres narrow. So they did exactly the same thing. Shallower seat angle, bigger gear, try and lean onto that. Right. Basically, try and hold your weight up. Because I've got albatross arms, and it's not.
You should have been a swimmer.
And after 3 minutes, it was awful. I was like, oh God, there's the burn in my arms. I thought, oh no, this isn't going to happen. And that cost £250 for 1 hour at the velodrome.
In Manchester.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're not sponsored. You're thinking, this is a different game now, because in the olden days, you could ride a time trial bike, and basically you're riding a time trial on the black line at the track, because the centrifugal force was taken out of the equation because you're resting your body. But not now.
Let's go back again, Graeme.
Yes, sorry.
Right, the book explains your methods, your theories behind all kinds of things, pedaling, breathing even. I thought breathing was something I did pretty well, but having read your book, it turns out I'm breathing completely wrong. But all these things obviously went into your own sporting achievements. Did they all come at once? I mean, you explore obviously biology, the machine itself. Did you have success with one particularly innovative thing, whether it be your bike or yourself?
Probably.
Did that lead you on the road to further discoveries?
I'd be interested to find out more feedback from that breathing technique. Because I have had one guy, well, there's been some tweets about people really finding it beneficial.
Tell people what your breathing technique is. Can you explain it?
Right, the basic terms is that the most important thing about breathing is breathing out. Because if you take human nature as, well, human instinct, if you're drowning in a pool, you're going, you're trying to breathe in. Whereas the most important thing is to breathe out, that you need the stale air out. Very short explanation is the average sweep volume of your lungs in and out is, let's say you get 6 litre lungs, then 2 litres of that is going out and then 2 litres back in. So there's 2/3 of the bad air still there. So the average oxygen content is 14-16% compared to 21% in the atmosphere. So the most important thing is to get most of that bad air out, more than you normally would do.
How did you discover this?
Well, I didn't discover it. This is the thing. I was actually reading a book about lung function. I camped in the west coast of Arran in gas exchange, as you do. and I started thinking, hold on, excuse me, because you can mess about with flaring nostrils and breathing under your tongue, but you're basically, your lungs are bellow. There's one road in and one road out for that air. And then you've got gas exchange and oxygen, and there's carbon dioxide coming back out. So you've got all this gas exchange going on. So as all there's so much efficiency, you can breathe quicker and shallower, or you can breathe bigger, deeper breaths, but less often. Either way, what you have is, if you're using the same, just breathing in and out the same amount all the time, then what you have is that average stale air in your lungs. So I tried a 2-phase and a 4-phase breathing technique, and it settled on the 3-phase because that's the one that worked for me the best.
When was this? When?
This, I'm afraid this was actually after I was racing Jason and all of that.
So you've not really used this in competition?
No.
Yeah, can you explain, because there's a method to it as well?
There is.
The technique.
The technique is,
everyone can try it now.
Breathe out quite a lot, not like, but breathe more than you normally would out. Breathe more than you normally would in. Then you have a wee half breath out, and then a wee half breath, a wee quarter breath back in, and then the whole thing swept back out again. The reason for that being is that if you want the maximum amount of good air for the maximum amount of time. That's the principle of it. So I went to Strop Mountain and tried it. It's kind of the same technique of, let's turn his handlebars around and
yeah, I mean, the breathing technique is not something that people would necessarily see as being particularly different. They wouldn't notice the difference in your breathing. But in your other innovations, going most obviously with the bike, going right back to the late 80s.
But absolutely not. I think if there was one thing that's going to change somebody's ability to ride quicker, it's the breathing technique.
Right, but I'm sort of talking about to the naked eye, what's most visible. Going back to the 80s, something you talk about in your book quite a lot is confidence, having the confidence to put into practice some of these methods. But you were the first person to really put these methods into practice. And going back to the late 80s, when you turned the handlebars up on your bike and began turning up at time trials and riding in this really strange position, you must have got a bit of slagging, did you?
Well, I did get a wee bit of a... luckily, most of it didn't feed back to me till long afterwards.
Would that put you off?
On one occasion, apparently, a policeman was at the turn of a roundabout, and he turned around to the turn marshal and said, "Look at that poor bloke, and somebody's built a bike special." So that was kind of the feedback with that crouch position. And sometimes people ask me, when you're really, really angry, the governing body banned that position. But actually, no, because in retrospect, they did me a favour, because they got me out of a comfort zone. And I never knew I was in a comfort zone. I just rode that same way. And then I had to change. And comfort zones aren't easy to get out of. And it's almost like I'm the object with momentum. It's going to take another force to change that direction.
But to persist with that position, when it must have been very uncomfortable to start with, even with or especially with your long arms. It must have been very uncomfortable. But you must have been convinced that the aerodynamic benefits were worth that discomfort and potential ridicule from your peers.
Yes. Ones are actually... Well, I don't think people really, really persevered to try and get that position working. Because the secret was you had to tone in the handlebars, because people were having their entire arm folded up, which is just going to be awful after like 5 minutes. Whereas I would have the handlebars, I don't know if anybody at the back can see, my handlebars kind of tuned in so that the bottom of your wrist was actually resting on the side of your your chest cavity rather than folding your arms up, which and Francesco Moser probably did 90% of me getting banned.
Yeah. Because
he actually made a big sponge thing, 90-degree seat angles, big sponge, and all these protégés riding about on all these bikes.
Well, you broke our record in that position in '93, and then won the world title. And people did start to copy it then, didn't they? I mean, including Chris Borden briefly.
Briefly, yes. And Francesco, with his protégés, was the biggest thing that was causing upset because of the sponge, because of the support, because of the seat angle. It was going more and more and more forward. And they weren't going especially quick. I mean, they really weren't going quick. But the funniest thing was, just in a soundbite, the funniest thing was the Italians, amazing style. Built these beautiful bikes, with these brackets on them. That they assumed that I'd cut the middle out of a standard bottom bracket, which would have been the easy thing to do, which I started doing at the start and realised that engineering is all wrong. That's why the big bearings in the washing machine parts, and it probably was the first outboard bearings, because the bearings had to be mounted right onto the crank rather than onto a spindle. So that was the start of the outboard actual bearings mounted on a crank. But the towns couldn't see that, you see. And I thought, well, as soon as they ask, what's the problem here? Because they ever getting big spanners, I can't understand it, like tightening these brackets, constantly tightening these brackets all the time. And as soon as Emery said, Graeme, what's the problem here? Then I'd explain it to them.
This goes back though to this goes back to the first question. Right? I mean, a lot of people obviously focused when you broke their record on the bike. So, and you would probably acknowledge yourself that the aerodynamics of the bike were certainly an important factor.
Yes.
But how can you put a percentage on it? How much was it the athlete? How much was it the bike?
It's a difficult one. I'll tell you what actually was one of the most important rides I did in my career. Was actually in 1997, came back for the British Time Trial Championship, but that was after the Superman was banned, and it was all 75 centimetre restrictions, and it was all totally legal at that time for pretty much what they have for pursuit rules now, apart from the frame itself.
So to give people a quick reminder, your position
yes.
from '93, that position
tuck
was
position.
banned. Then Graeme returned with the Superman position, which was on the same bike, but
yes.
with your arms outstretched in front of you. Then that was banned.
Right out in front, and then that was banned. And 1997, I turned up at the British Time Trial Championship. Well, I rode a 10-mile time trial the day before.
Yeah.
In mid-1830 something, which was only, and it wasn't a downhill start. It was like
and it was on a pretty standard bike.
Yeah, pretty standard bike with the tri-bars, yeah. And then the British Time Trial Championship.
So I think that answers the question. You were quite a good athlete.
So, but I started buying into the whole thing about 25% advantage and what is the advantage. And then when I was doing mid-18 and won the British Time Trial Championship on standard tri-bars, I'm thinking, how much is it really?
Well, did you start to think, maybe I'm a better athlete than I thought I was?
Well, I had thought that after having a real tussle up Vale Pass. The background to that doesn't even matter, but there was a tussle in Vale Pass with the road riders.
Is this in a road race or just training?
This was actually in the build-up to going to Colombia in 1995. Mm-hmm. And this was the road team. And somebody had really annoyed me. We're like loosening brake locks, loosened skewers, all sorts of stuff like that continuously. And then he started, you know what it's like if you're out riding and somebody wants to start half-wheeling and half-wheeling, you can ignore it for so long and you go, you know what, to hell with it. But riding up Vale Pass with the road riders and going up there at that speed being the quickest on Vale Pass, which is like 5,000 feet of climbing, then you think, hold on, your power to weight ratio, you can't hide from being able to climb a hill for the power output. So at that point I thought, hold on, I'm actually producing, there's no aerodynamic advantage whatsoever on Vale Pass. That's basically power to weight.
Pure physical
yes.
ability. Yeah.
So that plus a time trial championship, I'm thinking, how much was there? I don't think there's been any real conclusive wind tunnel testing on both of those positions.
Is the guy you mentioned there, is he now a coach of British cycling by any chance? Without naming any names.
That could actually be the case, without naming anybody.
And so you had that, you had that to put up with. Certain call it bullying. You were bullied by the governing body, and by that time as well, by that time, 95 was the year, of course, you joined the French team, the Groupement.
Yes.
And lasted about 3 days.
Actually, it was a world record for the world's shortest ever professional road contract, which lasted, I think it's about 11 hours.
11 hours.
1st of January, Obree, you're off the team, goodbye. So
you'd been to a training camp get together, hadn't you?
Yes.
In France.
Well, I hadn't been to a training camp. I went on the 23rd and the 24th of December, being hailed from, oh, you've to go to France, middle of France. And me and Robert gave me a lift from the airport, and by the time we drove through France to this darkened chateau in the middle of winter, we were an hour later than we should have been. And Guy goes, you are late, there is no dinner. And there was a load of food lying there. And I'm thinking, do I really want to be part of this world? And all the French riders are there eating their food. And they're like, just a grunt. And I'm thinking, is this the world of professional road cycling?
Fortunately, you had your cornflakes with you.
I had my cornflakes, which Robert was also glad of.
Yeah.
I've got a bad habit of always having food, and especially if you're going abroad somewhere, then you get... I would chuck my bike bag, skim milk, you know the ones that's sealed, it's like UHT, and cornflakes, and a bowl and spoon. And
so that was your brief experience of the Group 1, but Chris Boardman, of course, had followed that path into the continental road racing scene, and he'd won the prologue in the Tour de France the previous year, and that was obviously the path that you were going to follow. The doping side is something you were also exposed to in that 11-hour period that you were a member of the team, and there might have been a connection there with you being disposed.
Well, it was explained, but to tell it straight, it was explained to me that, and people can see exactly how it's been going down in the 90s. Now, in hindsight, with the revolutions that's been, but it was explained to me that there was 2,000 euro. Was it euros at that point? Basically 2,000 quid out of the contract to pay for a whole lot of stuff, like amphetamines and stuff like that, and blood doping, and there was 4 different things. Growth hormone.
EPO, probably.
Steroids.
EPO.
Yes, EPO, steroid stimulants there. And that was worth $8,000, and it was a bargain. And I was like, I'll just give that a miss. And then I'm off the team. But it's not even the Group 1 situation. The fact is, there was no other even inquiry at that point.
Because
there was.
You came out and said this pretty soon afterwards, didn't you, to L'Equipe?
Yes, I did. Well, I didn't, not quickly. I had to absorb it, and I couldn't say anything because at that point, you couldn't tell the truth. So you'd end up losing your house and getting sued because you just can't say it. So all that happened, there was no other reply or inquiry. What I did, I phoned the German people that I knew, Die Continental, not an Undertaker's. Die Continental, and I said, listen, can you help me with tyres and a skin suit? Because I wanted to look sponsored out of pride. And that's the point. Well, my brother died as well in the winter, and plus I could look wrong. Plus I'd lost the hour record. Plus I'd been banned from the Worlds in 1994 in Sicily. So it wasn't a good winter.
No, it's piling up.
Yes, it wasn't a good winter, and eventually I goes, you know what? They said use clip-on handlebars. We'll be happy. So then I start thinking, what is the limit of possibility? Because I always think everything's got a limit of possibility. You've got to find out what the limits are, and what you can work within those constraints. But so, and my thought process goes, what are the absolute limits of possibility with these bars? And obviously, with your arms right out in front of you was one extreme.
So that kind of gave birth to the Superman position.
It did.
In a way, that adversity.
That adversity, and...
But, I mean, you had, obviously, and Hein Verbruggen, I remember, came out and said, described you as being bitter. Hein Verbruggen being the president of the UCI at the time after Graeme's interview in L'Equipe, he said, oh, he's just a bitter rider because he lost his place. Was there anger, was there resentment, in particular towards the powers that be in cycling?
Actually, there was an awful lot of indifference from my point of view. Actually, it was out the other side of my, well, I'll say a gap decade. But I did write the biography and made a film in that time. But I wasn't well for a long time. And at the end of that, I was in the Tour de France, was it 2006, when... Floyd Landis. And I saw the riders coming up the Champs-Élysées and had to walk away. I never realised how much resentment I actually had. I couldn't even watch them. because they'd stolen my career. I mean, other cyclists in here might be disgusted with what happened and think that's terrible what happened to cycling, but my actual career was destroyed because I wouldn't, the whole drug situation. And I'm not bitter to the riders, I'm bitter to the entire situation because I can understand the pressures.
I know that story is true because there's a great postscript to that. You walking away. I think you were on a stag weekend, weren't you, at the Tour de France? And you walked away. And,
yes. Anyway,
and you were found in the Gare du Nord the next morning by Sean Yates of all people.
Yes, I lost the passport and money, and yes, I'd rather be down and out in London than Paris.
Lovely.
Yes.
He said when he's in Paris, he said he'd rather be down and out in Paris. But Graeme, do you ever think, you know, by most accounts anyway, the sport has changed quite a lot since then. Things are better. Is there a part of you that kind of wishes that you'd maybe had a chance to pursue a career in a fairer, cleaner era?
Well, there is, but you can't turn the clock back. What we have is a situation now where it's probably is a lot cleaner sport than it was. In fact, it's probably completely more or less cleaned up. Wouldn't you think so? Well, I don't know anything about it. I'm the last person that's going to find anything like that out.
Your instinct was right about Floyd Landis, though.
Well, I walked away and I just couldn't watch any of that. So, and that was the moment where that searing resentment really bubbled to the surface. And the resentment isn't a good thing to have, but it's that level of resentment and actual fuel that anger, because most people probably know that I went through quite a lot of, well, kind of mental health issues, which is depression, and then when you're in that depressed state, you don't actually feel emotions. So in a lot of ways, that was healthy to feel that anger at last. But that was still anger there, not directed towards the riders, directed to the whole situation.
I mean, the other thing that I mentioned that comes out in your book is it is all about reaching your own potential, measuring yourself against yourself, and that comes through very strongly in your advice about setting up your turbo trainer and all your kind of measurements that you take. But I mean, do you look back? You must have had, as you said, you went through a period afterwards of ill health, but you must have had real mental strength throughout that period to have the confidence to do things differently, to think about things differently, and do them differently. I mean, do you sort of look back on the younger you and think, where did that come from? Where did it come from?
Well, it was almost completely obsessional behaviour. Now, it was an unhealthy obsessional behaviour which produced an awful lot of good results. But what I'm talking about in the book is if you can actually develop the outcome of an obsessional behaviour without actually the badness of an obsessional behaviour. And also I did actually mention that the effect on your friends and family, and you don't have, you can actually use your time. I wrote that book, well, a lot of it in mind of the constraints of modern society of people who don't want to give up their work and train all day, and they get work commitments, social commitments, maybe in family. You get X number of hours, you get X amount of resources. How do you direct that and use it as wisely as you can and most usefully as you can within that constraints that most ordinary people have in their lives? And that's what, anyway, obsessional behaviour. Yes, that wasn't altogether
but also,
healthy.
Not just obsessional behaviour, but also being able to summons up this primal anger. And you describe in the book
yes.
the necessity, if you're an ambitious athlete, of being able to have an all-out tantrum.
Yes, and actually,
floor, kicking, screaming.
Unfortunately, I was talking about the lying tantrum, which is very, very effective and getting your energy going. But I've actually since discovered that a standing tantrum is quite effective as well. So maybe in other additions you can add the standing tantrum, which doesn't have freak out your neighbours as well.
So, I mean, is this something genuinely that you've done? Not the lying down tantrum. Was that something you did as an athlete?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the standing tantrum. I mean, if it feels free to go actually stand up and go, actually wave your arms about it and really give it large, and you feel this rush of energy, like ready to take something on.
It sounds crazy, but actually, the way Graeme describes it in the book, it makes some kind of sense.
So it does make sense in the book.
trust?
I think it would take a bit of confidence for people to start having standing just because of the image of it. But let's say before you go on your turbo trainer, let's say you've come in from a not even a hard day's work, just a long day's work, and you're sitting about and you're mentally, you feel jaded. Although you haven't used much energy, you know, if you sat and you're doing a computer all day or something, he goes, oh, I better go on that turbo trainer. So rather than just going your turbo trainer, in the privacy of your garage, you go, and then get on it, and you've released your primal energy.
I was also the book is full of nuggets like this.
Sorry, Richard. I was also brought onto the fact that what we have, and I met a lot of you people next door, and it was all very convivial, everybody queuing up, and nobody's barging in to get that glass of water or wine or something like that, right? So it's all very convivial and all very polite. But then you get to a bike race, and you've got to barge your way to the front. It's a dichotomy. You have to be something else, some primal animal, in a bike race, and then you've got to go, oh, how's the family afterwards? Or beforehand.
It's such an obvious thing, but when you read it, you realise I've never actually seen this explained before. This idea that you do actually literally have to become a different person.
Yes, you have to become
in a competitive environment.
A sociopath, sportingly.
But that's interesting because sociopath is a description that's been used a lot for Lance Armstrong. So where do you draw the line? I mean, you know, if you are allowed to become this monster in the context of a sporting event, where's the line? Why aren't you allowed to take drugs as well?
Well, the way I see it is, anybody who lines up for a bike race knows that it's a contest, and people are going to be very rude during that contest. Like very rude in terms of barging or bringing past. It's not like after you. It's like you've got to get to that finish line before everybody else, or if it's a time trial, you've got to go as fast as you humanly can for yourself, bearing in mind that is your opponent is the other person. Personally, I wouldn't be riding to beat a person. The other person there is a challenge for me to actually reach into myself. Obviously, you want to win, but it's the winning, it's not the beating. That see, winning's positive, but beating somebody is negative. You're drawing your drive is coming from something negative if you want to beat somebody.
But going back to that question about where you draw the line, I mean, you were clearly ambitious. It was a matter, as you've said, of life or death for you in the 1990s to be a successful cyclist. You know, when you were offered that doping program, why did you say no? Because
it'd be dishonourable. I wanted to feel good about myself, self-worth. Now, I didn't felt self-worthless. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I think, why didn't I just take the drugs? No, seriously, I think, why didn't I just take the drugs and I'd be a whole lot more gold to ripper off me right now. So, and then at the end of the process of being mentally ill and the whole everything, you're not left with very much. So, something to think, if I'd taken the drugs and done the whole thing, then you know the kind of money that's getting thrown at people. So, but then I think, hold on.
Was there a part of you as well that maybe thought psychologically it'd be a difficult thing to deal with and reconcile with?
I mean, really, I couldn't have done it. It wasn't in my nature to do it. And I came from a background, I don't know how many time trials around here today. But time trial and background is, well, certainly in the west coast of Scotland, it would be a scandal if somebody took an aspirin. No, seriously, let's get an aspirin to go quicker. Seriously, you get changed in a lay-by and it's all, it would be so dishonourable. And I came from that background. At the age of 27, it goes, right, that is finally it. I've got to actually win the World Championship. So I wasn't groomed. These riders are groomed. The road riders are groomed from a very young age. And it all becomes very normalised. It's almost like, see the religious, what do you call it, fervour, and people getting groomed into that. Well, it's almost like that, except for bike riding and taking drugs. It's normalised over the course of years.
Let's talk briefly about your most recent exploit before we open up to some questions. Graeme is not long back from America, where you went out to attempt the world land speed record.
Yes.
On in Beastie.
In the Beastie,
in the
yes.
Beastie, which you built in your kitchen.
Yes, kitchen stroke sitting room.
Right. Okay, glad we clarified that.
Not to be recommended.
And using bits of pots and pans and all the usual Obree kind of. It's like all the ingredients of a great Obree exploit. This. But
yes.
Tell us how it went out there.
If you actually look close enough, you would actually find specks of dust. It was permeated through. No matter how much you tape up doors and stuff like that, that fine dust permeates through into even inside my CDs. Not recommended. But anyway, preparation was. This was supposed to be a year ago, a year past September. But anyway, there was problems with the skin and the way it was attaching, and it turned out there wasn't enough room for my head to see it properly, and then I'd extend it and basically had to start from scratch. The material wasn't good. I had to rebuild it with Kevlar, totally on my own, which did become quite stressful, to be honest. And went to America, had it shipped out to America. I was lucky to get sponsors.
Just to explain this, I mean, most of these bikes, the rider lies on their back, feet forward. You went the other way, obviously. You were,
yes, I went
face front.
Face
lying on
first.
Your front, face forward.
There was I had a concept for this. The first thing I said was, well, after I'd gone through the hour record, and my arms were aching after 3 minutes, I thought, oh, well, let's go home now. And then after a bit, I thought, I'm actually in reasonable shape. There must be something else that I can do that utilises what, like building bikes, designing bikes, riding bikes. I thought, well, here it is. I was involved in it in the 90s. And my concept was, well, first question I was lying in the bath. I was thinking, right, let's do that. Question is, what would an alien do? No, seriously, I asked myself, what would an alien do? Forget all the preconditions, the preconceptions of everything. If you said to an alien, right, you have to use this organism, you have to travel through the Earth's atmosphere on a flat surface. How's the fastest way of actually achieving this? Without any other influence or idea from scratch. So it's much as the same idea with the Superman position. I thought, okay, what are the limiting factors? And clearly the limiting factor is the human body itself. So my thought process went to what is the fastest human form forget movement of machines or aerodynamics, which is basically a skydiver going head first, with your arms tucked in. It's most aerodynamic and your feet together. It's most aerodynamic that a human being can be. So I thought, okay, so it's got to be head first. Also, my thinking was that the shoulders are the widest point, then the hips, and then if the feet can just miss each other. If I'm using movement, and then the movement itself, I thought, okay, you have to deviate from perfect aerodynamic possibility in order to extract energy. So my thought process then went to, you want nothing between the ankles, you want nothing outside the ankles, so that the whole, if you look at the human form from above, shoulders, hips, feet just missing each other in a push-pull arrangement, which means that what you have is a teardrop shape. That was my thought process, was that, and also to minimise the frontal area, because if your feet are just missing each other, then, and you're using a push-pull arrangement, then each knee can almost use the same space as the one that's left it, because both knees aren't descended at any given moment. So what you have from the front is actually a V-shaped, a triangular shape, than what you have is a straight outline that you would have if you had a circular motion. So it was all to do with aerodynamic frontal area. Then I was hoping to get a good drag factor coefficient from the fairing, which is not my speciality. Aerodynamics is not my speciality. I was hoping to have a lot of help with that, which didn't materialise in the end, and I had to take it all back to my sitting room and start from scratch. Which it turns out wasn't. I didn't do as good a job in actual fairing itself from what logic would dictate from the teardrop shape. Teardrop isn't actually. It turns out it's not the most aerodynamic shape.
Is it not?
No, it's not.
What is this?
The aerodynamic expert from the Dutch team, and he did actually break the world record just there. Was explaining, and these you what talking about when that World Championship is on, the knowledge in that hall. This could be the World Championship. This room, maybe slightly bigger and some bikes. That's the World HPV Championship in this wee town in Nevada, 300 miles from anywhere. And everybody's all really nice and helpful. But the knowledge there is in that room, this chap that explained my aerodynamics, well, I had to tease it out of him. God, don't show me so much respect. Tell me what I've done wrong with this. He actually has changed the design, that's a design program, aerodynamic programming for a major car company, because of the experiments what knowledge. And he said even with all the best actual theoretical aerodynamics, you get a real bike in real air, then the whole thing changes, and computers can't just design stuff, and it's this real actual testing. And he said nothing is going to make, no wind tunnels, nothing's going to make up for real air. How the real air actually
Responds.
responds to a real object.
But you broke the world record.
But I broke the world prone record, which is the head first record, which has stood. Now I've got to say this right. It stood unbroken for 30 years. And I've got to add this bit as well, Richard, as by the legendary Richard Bryan.
Right.
Yes.
So that's it. You're not.
Yeah. 56.62 miles an hour.
But you're not. That's it. You're not going to.
That's it.
You've
Done.
announced your retirement. You're no more competitive.
And I'm not going to mention that a French lady did 67.
No, not mention that.
Let's not mention that.
No, but
it's a world record.
I mean, were you quite humbled by what you discovered there?
I was humbled by it. I didn't realise how much from first principles of what I thought was going to be the best aerodynamics, and actually turns out it's not. And there are various scientific reasons why it wasn't as fast as it could have been.
Why are you not tempted to go back and try again?
Well, part of it was quite traumatic. The whole stress of it, the stress, and also it was really claustrophobic. Most of the time I try not to have a panic attack, like breathing through a snorkel thing and like that, try to steer this thing from
If anybody needs cheered up any day, just look up clips of Graeme flying across the Nevada desert in this contraption and see if you can spot the snorkel sticking out.
Yes, so
no, you're not going to do it again.
I think I might give that one a miss.
Does anybody have any questions? I think there's a microphone to go around. Hands up for questions. There we are.
Hello, Graeme. Take you back to the point about Hein Verbruggen. Given that Brian Cookson is now president of the UCI, and Pat McQuaid, in his wisdom, made Hein Verbruggen life president, I think, or life chairman?
Honorary president.
Honorary president, thank you, Richard. What do you think Brian Cookson should do with Hein Verbruggen now?
Oh, I've never been asked that before. I don't know. Is he good at his job? You know what? Actually, I don't know enough about the UCI and the workings of.
Your only real sort of dealings with Hein Verbruggen were probably when he ran onto the track to try and stop you.
Yes. I don't know if anyone's seen a film called The Flying Scotsman.
Stephen Burkoff plays Hein
Verbruggen. Right. Well, what happens is scriptwriters have to change the facts so that they're a scriptwriter. So. But the real story is Hein Verbruggen actually ran onto the track because nobody else was going to raise that flag. Because it was front page of Gazzetta dello Sport. It was the biggest paper in Italy. It was like mafioso. So nobody wanted to be that guy with the flag. And Hein goes, that's it, it's over. And then at that point, obviously, it's like 40 degrees, and you're gasping your lungs out, and you're not fully thinking as clearly as you would do. We come out of the home straight onto the home straight, and he's getting it. No, seriously, I was like, he had to jump out the way. I did my 4 kilometres, and then he goes, by the way, you're disqualified. and that's me out of the World Championships.
So there's your answer. That's what he would do with him. He'd ride straight into it.
Right straight into him there.
There we are. Any other questions?
Thank you. I was wondering the breathing pattern that you were referring to earlier about the 3-phase breathing pattern. Would that work for hill climbs?
I think it would, because I'll tell you why. Because when I tested this, when I first thought of it was up the what they call the Ross Road in Arran. I was camped the other side of it, the west coast, up the Ross Road, which is what 1,200, 1,300 feet, 1,300 feet. And what I was doing, I was going back to the old Neanderthal system of just breathing in and out. And then changing over to the 3-phase thing, and I was finding I was changing up like a cog. So, and then I was changing back to the old breathing system, and I was so out of breath I had to go back to the 3-phase thing. So it must help. And a friend of mine also at the time, I thought I need corroboration on this, that it's not just me feeling good or something. With a preset turbo trainer, and he knew exactly what power that he would normally produce. And he produced more power for 9 beats less heart rate that he would normally have. So that was the evidence that I was looking for. But it would be great if sports scientists or people tested it, made an actual quantifiable test of what is the difference.
I'm happy to give it a go. Because, I got a shocking sore throat from doing a hill climb, like a time trial hill climb, and it made me, I was retching because my throat was so sore at the end, and I thought, surely every hill climb can't end up in this with the same result, that you feel like you're going to throw up because you...
Oh, it can.
That's normal.
I don't like hill climbs.
That's my answer then.
What's interesting is that what Graeme describes really in his book, and his modus operandi throughout, is the aggregation of marginal gains, despite your the fact you don't think you would get along with Brailsford. I can see both approaching it from the same place, really.
Yes. Yeah, it would be you're probably right, Richard, yes.
But, I mean, would you be open, say Team Sky came along and said, Graeme would like you to help us out looking at breathing or anything, would you be open to an approach?
I would be open to an approach, but I don't know how much I would be able to contribute, because they've got smart people who work from first principles as well. You're thinking there's a lot of convergent evolution. I mean, two different groups of people coming to the same solution. I mean, look at bike design. That's convergent evolution. You've got a set of rules and regulations, and what you have is different manufacturers come to the same, eventually coming to the same end result from those specifications.
Any other questions?
Hello, Graeme. I want to ask you if I can join 2 questions together. Would that be all right?
Yeah, go for it.
I want to ask you, first of all, what your take is on David Miller, who's retiring at the end of 2014. What he's like as a person. Do you feel he's been contrite enough after all the drugs that and the busting and the suspension that he's had? And I also want to ask you, because he started off at Cofidis, and he explains in his book about the drugs culture there. What do you feel about French teams in general? Because since the Festina bust-up, I mean, they've had absolutely nothing apart from maybe Verkler and Chavanel, who are good riders. What do you feel about that in general? First of all, Miller, and then maybe French cycling teams?
Well, I think if somebody broke into somebody else's house and they did X amount of jail time for that, they would then be deemed to have fulfilled their punishment to society. Now, of rehabilitation, been rehabilitated. So I don't see why a sports person shouldn't be able to enjoy that same human right almost, that once you've done your punishment, you then seem to be rehabilitated. Now, David Miller didn't have to go and start talking about, the drug scene and we really got to do something about it. And he was clearly quite vociferous over the years, hasn't he? which you didn't have to do that. So I think, okay, he was wrong. He could have admitted it quicker, but the fact is, he has actually helped to change attitudes. And I actually spoke to a very interesting conversation, of course, at Cambridge University a couple of years ago with the head of the anti-doping agency. We happened to meet up at dinner. Well, he was doing a presentation, and I thought, because I have this obsessional behaviour of reading big, thick biology books, and I thought, and I sat through his presentation and thought, that man knows what he's talking about. The scientific advisor. So we get chatting over dinner, and there's if you ever get a chance to look up 1958, 1959 AAA handbook, and in that handbook, there is, in fact, a whole page that says steroids, breakfast of champions, endorsed and approved by the AAA. And then they get hacked off because the Russians did it better. And that's why the steroids get banned. But that was the start of that. The whole attitude was, and his opinion was, actually, if somebody really, really, really wants to get around the drug issue, they will. Like, if you put a bag, took some of your blood out and chucked it, put it in your fridge, or your mate's fridge, and then saved it for a big event a month later, then you would actually have an advantage and you wouldn't get caught. That can still happen. And another drug taping will still happen. But what you have now is a change of attitude. And he reckoned that the only thing that's really, really going to stop it is a peer group not accepting that anymore. And I thought, you're right. And David Miller has contributed partly to that change of attitude. So I think we'll fair dues then.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Any
Well,
thoughts
thanks.
on French teams?
In a lot of ways, what happens, happened. There was one French writer that I totally respect to this day as a human being and as an athlete. I actually apologised in advance of taking drugs. He goes, what can I do?
Did he apologise to you?
In advance. Yes, of a major event. And he was truly sorry. He was like, what can I do?
Can you foresee a French rider winning the Tour de France in the next 10 years, maybe?
I haven't a clue. Richard's your Tour de France man. Don't know.
Thank you.
Hi, Graeme. Was the French rider Luc Leblanc by any chance?
Actually, it wasn't, no. But I could totally see the situation because people were doing this with impunity and people were going so much quicker. And I mean, you end up in a situation where, A, I was ill, but B, I remember sat in a plane and reading British Airways in-flight magazine, and there's a double page of me, it was like Britain's best chance of gold. And I know that I'm going to be lucky to get in the top 10.
Was that ahead of Atlanta?
Yes.
In 96?
That's not a nice position to be in. It's like damage limitation. So, and that's just how it was. But thankfully, it's better days.
Any other questions? No, there's maybe one back there and then up here.
Hi, Graeme. If you were Brian Cookson for the day, God forbid, what would you change about the UCI?
I would make it less sexist. I still think the sport is very, very, very sexist in a male-dominated way. And I think they could do a lot more. Well, where's the Women's Tour de France? Well, what's happened to it? It's like you can just quietly forget women's sport anymore. So that's always my bugbear. Because it is so, so much more could be done. But I do need to qualify something else though. I actually thought of being becoming a UCI official myself actually, but I have a half a mind to do that.
Yeah, you should.
But
We'd all encourage you.
be overqualified. No, seriously. Seriously, the vast majority of people who are in the sport, or officialdom of the sport, are actually selfless volunteers who do so much for the sport that without them the sport wouldn't operate. So although I kind of dig at the UCI because they ban me and everything, most of the people who make the sport run, do it well, and sport wouldn't work without them. Especially the ones that the folk who give it their free time, that will bear the expenses, or just selfless volunteers. There might even be some in the room today who organise races and do things.
There were Obree issues. Come and get me, plea to Brian Cookson. Any other? I think there was a question up here. Yeah, a couple up here.
So it's just a question about what you plan to do in the future. I mean, I know you design bikes, we all know. Would that be something that you'd be interested in pursuing?
Well, you know, actually I would like to have an input to bikes, specific. I'd like to learn more about material science, and I want to learn to work out from first principles if the regulations have stayed the same, they should stay pretty much the same for a long time, then what is actual total maximum possible best bike that can be made? And secondly, how can it be more accessible? But part of the problem I see with the sport we have today is that it's seen as not easily accessible by people who, in these austere times, might have kids in the discouragement from doing cycling, thinking it's £100 for a pair of pedals, and it's really quite an expensive sport. But it doesn't need to be like that. So I would like to it's almost like having a standard cricket bat, and if you can have a bike that's very little disadvantage compared to somebody spending thousands on that bike, then you get a fair contest even for young people to get into sport.
We've got time for maybe 2 more questions. Do we have time for one more? Sorry, one more question.
I'm honoured. So I'm probably not alone in hoping that when you say that the Beastie was the end of your career, actually you'll change your mind at some point. But assuming that it is, if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice from this position now, from what you know, what would it be?
Get a proper job. That's actually honest. Stick in at school. I don't know if you had students here or young people. Actually, you know what? You got to do what you can. You don't want to be in a position where you actually have to break the record or do something because, and you're down the line that you're, get a proper job.
Well, I mean, this book could be applied to cycling. I'm not on any commission for this at all. But what's great about this book is that it is very honest. It's very Graeme Obree. It's very honest. It doesn't. Some training manuals try to pretend it's easier than it actually is. You read this and you realise that it's extremely hard to fulfil your own potential, whatever that might be.
Yes,
I think
it is.
Graeme is going to stay here to sign books. So Graeme's going to stay here. I think books are for sale at the back, and I'm sure there'll be an orderly queue. But could you just, everybody, thank Graeme for coming today?